Kyle Harrison sat at his desk when the strange message came through. The signal was unlike anything Earth had ever received before. It came from somewhere deep in space, far beyond any human colony. Kyle worked as an ambassador for the United Nations Space Command. His job was to talk with alien species, but this was different. The voice that spoke through the communication device sounded desperate and afraid. It belonged to a creature called HFY, who said he represented something called the Zephyrian Alliance. Kyle had never heard of them before, but the fear in the alien's voice was real. "Please," the voice said through the translator, "we are dying. Our worlds are being eaten. We have tried everything, but nothing works. You are our last hope." Kyle called Commander Lisa Torres right away. She was one of Earth's best spaceship captains, and she knew how to handle first contact situations. Within hours, she was preparing her ship, the USS Liberty, for a journey to Zephyrian space. When Torres and her team arrived at the edge of Zephyrian territory, they could not believe what they saw. Entire planets had been stripped bare of all life. The worlds that once had green forests and blue oceans were now nothing but empty rock floating in space. The air around these dead planets was thin and cold. HFY met them on one of the few remaining Zephyrian stations. He was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to change colors when the light hit it. His people had 4 arms instead of 2, and their eyes were much larger than human eyes. Despite their strange appearance, Torres could see the same emotions she recognized in humans. HFY was scared, tired, and desperate. "The Devourer has taken 12 of our worlds," HFY explained as he showed them images of the destruction. "It is a creature the size of a planet. It feeds on all living things. Our strongest weapons do nothing to it. We have lost millions of our people." Torres studied the images carefully. Her second-in-command, Captain Jake Morrison, asked many questions about how the creature attacked and what the Zephyrians had tried to do to stop it. But it was Dr. Amanda Price, the team's scientist, who asked the most interesting questions. She wanted to know what the creature ate, how it chose which planets to attack, and how long it stayed in each place. The Zephyrians thought these questions were strange. They wanted to know about weapons and defense, not eating habits. "We will help you," Torres promised, "but first we need to understand exactly what we are dealing with."
Back on Earth, President Helen Carter called an emergency meeting. She put Admiral Rick Stone in charge of a new mission called Operation Shepherd. Every top scientist on Earth was asked to help solve the alien crisis. Dr. Amanda Price worked day and night in her laboratory. She studied all the information the Zephyrians had given them about the Devourer. She worked with Dr. Carl Jung, who knew about alien life forms. Together, they made an amazing discovery. "This creature is not a monster," Dr. Price told the other scientists. "It is more like a giant space whale. It evolved somewhere between the galaxies, where there is almost nothing to eat. The only food it can find is on planets that have life." The Devourer was not evil or mean. It was just very, very hungry. It had been traveling through space for thousands of years, looking for the special mix of nutrients that only living worlds could provide. To the creature, planets with life were like patches of grass to a hungry cow. Dr. Nancy Green was an expert on farming. She had spent her whole life learning how to grow food better and faster. When she heard about the Devourer, she had an idea that shocked everyone. "What if we don't try to kill it?" she asked. "What if we feed it instead?" Meanwhile, Commander Torres took her ship back to Zephyrian space. This time, she brought Colonel Pete Davis and his soldiers with her. They used special technology to hide their ship and get close to the devourer while it was feeding. What they saw was both terrible and beautiful. The creature was bigger than any planet they had ever seen. It had long feeding tubes that reached down to the surface of worlds like giant straws. These tubes were so big that entire cities could fit inside them. The creature moved slowly and carefully, taking what it needed from each world. Torres watched through her ship's cameras. She noticed something important. The creature did not eat everything at once. It picked certain areas and left others alone, just like a farmer might choose the best parts of a field to harvest first. "It has preferences," Torres told her crew. Lieutenant Sam Rogers was Torres's best pilot. He grew up on a farm before joining the Space Navy. "My grandfather used to lead cattle around the farm by putting salt where he wanted them to go," Sam said. "Maybe we can do the same thing with this creature." Dr. Price smiled when she heard this idea. "We don't need to fight the devourer. We need to become its farmers."
6 months later, something amazing was happening in Earth's shipyards. Admiral Stone watched as workers built the strangest fleet of ships anyone had ever seen. These were not warships with guns and missiles. These were floating farms, each one as big as a small moon. The biggest ship was called the UES Cornucopia. Commander Torres would be its captain. The ship looked different from any military vessel Earth had ever built. Instead of weapons, it had huge glass domes filled with growing plants. Instead of armor plating, it had special chambers where millions of crops could grow in space. Matt Parker was the engineer who designed these strange ships. He had to figure out how to make plants grow without gravity and without soil. His hydroponic systems used water and special nutrients to feed the plants. The crops could grow much faster than anything on Earth. Dr. Julie White worked with seeds and plants all day long. She created new types of crops that would grow exactly what the devourer needed to eat. These plants were designed to produce the right vitamins and minerals that the space creature craved. The fleet had other ships, too. The UES Abundance was filled with fruit trees that grew in zero gravity. The UES Plenty had tanks full of special algae that could multiply very quickly. Each ship in the fleet had a different job, but they all worked together like parts of a giant farm. Dan Lewis had been a farmer on Earth before he joined the Space Navy. Now he was in charge of all the growing operations. Many of his workers were volunteers from farms all over Earth. They had never been to space before, but they knew how to make things grow. The plan was simple but bold. They would create a trail of food in space, leading the devourer away from the alien worlds toward the edge of the galaxy where it could not hurt anyone. It would be like leading a giant cow across the stars using the biggest carrot anyone had ever imagined. The Zephyrians thought the humans were crazy. Kethfar and his people were warriors. They believed in fighting their enemies, not feeding them. They could not understand how giving food to the devourer would solve anything. "You want to make it stronger?" Kethfar asked Torres during one of their meetings. "No," Torres explained patiently. "We want to make it happy. A happy, well-fed creature will follow us anywhere we want it to go."
The first test came sooner than anyone expected. The devourer was heading toward another Zephyrian world, and millions of aliens would die if it arrived. Torres ordered her fleet to move into position between the creature and the planet. "Release the bait crop," Torres commanded from the bridge of the cornucopia. The farming ships opened their cargo doors and released millions of tons of specially grown food into space. The crops drifted in a thick green cloud, exactly the kind of nutrition the devourer loved most. The massive creature stopped moving toward the planet. Slowly, like a giant whale changing direction in the ocean, it turned toward the floating feast. Its enormous feeding tubes reached out and began consuming the crops. The plan was working. For months after that, the harvest fleet led the devourer across space in the strangest cattle drive in history. Navigator Frank Miller had to calculate new routes every day as the creature changed direction to follow the food trails. Communications officer Beth Davis kept in contact with alien governments who panicked every time the devourer passed near their star systems. The biggest crisis came when the supply ship UES Provider suffered a major breakdown. Captain Joe Clark sent an emergency message to the fleet. His ship's production systems had failed, and without the next scheduled food drop, the devourer might stop following them and return to hunting populated worlds. Chief Engineer Kate Martin led a desperate repair team aboard the Provider while the devourer moved closer and closer. The massive creature filled their view screens, blocking out the stars with its enormous bulk. Its feeding tentacles waved in space, searching for the expected meal. Dr. Nancy Green had an emergency idea. "We can use the ship's waste recycling systems," she told Captain Clark. "If we dump all our organic waste into space at once, it will create a giant algae bloom. It won't be as good as our regular crops, but it might keep the creature interested long enough for us to fix the main systems." It was a dangerous gamble. The Provider would be almost defenseless without its recycling systems working properly. But Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker and his security teams kept the ship running while the repairs continued. The emergency food worked. The devourer slowed down and began feeding on the algae cloud, while Kate Martin's team fixed the broken systems. Within hours, the Provider was making crops again, and the cosmic cattle drive continued toward the edge of the galaxy.
At the edge of the galaxy, humanity had prepared the greatest feast in history. An entire solar system had been turned into a massive farm just for the devourer. The planets glowed green with Earth crops, the asteroid belt sparkled with floating algae farms, and even the gas giant planets had been filled with organic nutrients. When the devourer finally arrived, it did something no one had ever seen before. Instead of just eating and moving on, the giant creature settled down in the middle of the system. It spread its feeding tentacles gently among the farming worlds, eating slowly and carefully like it was enjoying the meal. Dr. Price watched from the observation deck of the cornucopia. "Look at its behavior," she told Torres excitedly. "It's not rushing to consume everything. It's actually relaxing." The creature had been starving for thousands of years, driven from its home between the galaxies by some ancient disaster. Now, for the first time in ages, it had more food that it could eat in one place. 3 weeks later, Dr. Price made another discovery that shocked everyone. Deep inside the devourer's body, her scanners detected something incredible. "There are eggs," she announced to the fleet. "The devourer is going to have babies." Torres realized they had not just fed a hungry monster, they had saved an entire species from dying out completely. The devourer was the last of its kind, and now it would not be alone anymore. News of humanity's success spread across the galaxy faster than any spaceship could travel. The Zephyrians began learning Earth's farming methods to heal their damaged worlds. Other alien species came to Earth asking for help with their own environmental problems. Admiral Stone created the Galactic Agricultural Corps, turning soldiers into farmers and teachers. Human ships began traveling to distant worlds, not carrying weapons of war, but seeds of life and hope. Ambassador Kyle Harrison stood before the new Galactic Council, representing Earth for the first time. Around the great meeting hall sat representatives from dozens of alien species, all united by a common goal of helping life grow throughout the galaxy. Earth does not seek to conquer or control. We offer partnership and friendship. Where humanity goes, life flourishes. Far away at the galaxy's edge, the Devourer rested peacefully among its floating farms. Soon, its children would be born into a universe where they would never know hunger. The harvest ships had brought more than just food to the stars. They had brought a new age of cooperation and growth that would last forever.